Good morning. I'd like to welcome you here today. Thank you so much for coming to Franklin Tomorrow's Frank Talks. We're glad you're here. I'd like to thank two groups of people right now. I'd like to thank Williamson Medical Center. They are what we call a sustaining partner. We can't do these events without support, and we're grateful for Williamson Medical Center being our sustaining partner. And I'd like to thank Renaissance Bank for being our presenting partner and helping us to host Frank Talks every single month. Let's give them a round of applause. Now I'll bring on Mindy Tate, our Executive Director.
Thank you, Alina. That's Alina Bell, our board chair. We're so glad you're here this morning. I want to also say good morning. We've got a number of elected officials with us, Mayor Ken Moore, State Rep Sam Whitson, a number of aldermen, and some county commissioners and other elected officials. If you're an elected official, please stand and let us thank you for your service. So we're going to love that new traffic light when we go out, I'm pretty sure. But we also want to really say thank you to First Presbyterian and being our host today, First Presbyterian of Franklin. And we're joking that the door prizes, you get to be a membership to this church, so it's a good thing. But thank you, Mary Sellers Shaw, for working with us to be here this morning. And given the great setup, and if that traffic light really does work when we're leaving, you might see us here a little more frequently as well. So thanks. Let us know about that. So welcome to Frank Talks every second Monday of the month at a different location across the community, and we appreciate your being here. I want to introduce Nancy Conway now, who will conduct our Did You Know moment. So Nancy, come on up.
Thank you, Mindy, and good morning, everyone. You know, today's subject is Interstate 65. So just think about Mayamoa, Franklin, Tennessee, Interstate 65. What year did the Murfreesboro Road Highway 96 interchange in Franklin open? No, ma'am. Sorry.
Keep going.
63, no, ma'am. Sorry.
Anybody else?
Incorrect. Ma'am? Correct. Deb Barella. Now, Deb, since I don't think you will want a church membership, since I know you personally.
And she already has a very committed.
If you will just remind either Stacy or Mindy of your gift, and they will get it to you. Thank you all. Oh, Mindy,
Yes, ma'am.
just a side note, so you'll know a little bit more about I-65. Okay, Goose Creek interchange opened about that same time, and then Moores Lane opened in 1975, Sidon Parkway in 1984, and Cool Springs Galleria in 1991, those interchanges. Thank you.
So, and who knows what the number is of the Highway 96 interchange? What exit number that is? Sam? 65, that is correct. So good to know that y'all are paying attention and everything. And now I want to introduce Diane LeBlanc and Harrison Crabtree with Renaissance Bank. I am stunned they are here today. They're going to tell us about their new branch on Columbia Avenue because this is a big, big day, right?
Thanks, Mindy. Of course, our bank is a 115-year-old bank. I don't know if y'all know that. We're in 5 states. We're in 5. This is. I'm gonna take this. since I'm so tall. We're a 115-year-old bank in 5 states, and we have one location here in Franklin, which is just off of Carruthers. We're opening up our brand new bank today. It's 815 Columbia Highway. So we're across the street from the police station, brand new building. It took about 6 months to build, so Schaub Construction did a great job. And it's very contemporary, and we love it. And I want Diane to talk about the virtual teller system.
Good morning. Thanks so much for being here, and thanks for welcoming us into the downtown Franklin community. We have been looking forward to this for, I remember 6 years ago talking about it, so I'm very excited about today, first day. Please stop by. We have Triple Crown Bakery that is providing pastries to our clients today and this week. Ribbon cutting next week, and we have a little different concept in our Franklin downtown location. It's got what's considered the interactive teller machines. So you actually get to view a live person from our Georgia office, and you'll get to interact with them just as if there was someone in front of you. We do have real people in the office. Harrison and I are there, as well as 4 other employees. But we would love for you to stop by. We have a drawing that we're doing for the first couple of weeks to include you into a random giveaway of a 2-night stay at the new Hilton Curio Hotel. So no purchase necessary, nothing to do, but we'd love to have you come by and show you what we have to offer downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And okay, Triple Crown Bakery, a chance to win a 2-night stay at the new Harpeth Hotel, the Curio. It's right outside my office window, and I've endured months and months and months and months of construction, and maybe that'd be a good prize for me, I don't know. But we really appreciate the support of Williamson Medical Center and our friends at Renaissance Bank. And we'll be sending you a link later today to a video that we got this morning, a little too late to load into our system, to play about the emergency room of Williamson Medical Center. Maybe the video will be better than if you ever have to go there, okay? We hope you don't have to go to the ER. But we're so glad you're here this morning, and this is a very important topic for Williamson County. We're part of the South Corridor Study, which is 31 miles long, I think. I don't want to give away any trivia questions, Doug, but I'm going to turn it over to Doug Delaney, who is the Senior Supervising Planner in WSP's Nashville office, and he's the project manager for the South Corridor Study. This study was initiated in partnership with the folks at GNRC and WeGo Public Transit and the Tennessee Department of Transportation. And I know many people are represented here regarding those companies and those offices. So I'm going to turn it over to Doug when he gets set up. There's more coffee in the back. Restrooms are that way, in case you need to know that. And we'll be finished by 10:30 today. We did this earlier. We know it works. That's the good news. Here you go. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Mindy. Again, my name is Doug Delaney, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning to give you a little bit of an update and status on the South Corridor Study. With me this morning is Michelle Lacewell with the Greater Nashville Regional Council. Yes, she deserves applause. But we have been working on this study for a number of months now, and have a second round of public meetings coming up at the end of this month. But we're also trying to get out and meet with folks and attend events like this for folks that aren't able to come out to one of our public meetings. And one of the interesting things that we're trying to do as we go to different groups is do some polling. So if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and take out your phone. I usually don't do this when I make a presentation, but I'm going to ask you all to take out your phone, and I'm going to have you text the word input to the number 22333. So text the word input to 22333. And that 22333. And that will get you set up. And then as we go throughout the presentation this morning, we'll ask some polling questions, and you'll be able to see that live on the screen as we go through some of the information this morning.
Yes. Oh, this is Michelle Lacewell with GNRC. Michelle, tell us a little bit about what is GNRC?
I would love to share more about the Greater Nashville Regional Council. We are a council of governments here in Middle Tennessee. We represent 13 counties across the region. And so Mayor Moore, who is with us, sits on our executive, where'd he go? I've lost him. There he is. Sits on our executive board and is our immediate past president. We have a variety of services that we provide across the region. One thing that we do, obviously related to the work that we're doing here today, is transportation and land use planning. Excuse me, coffee. But we also have a lot of local land use services for smaller communities across the region that do not have full-time planning staff. We are contracted out to be their planning staff across the region, which is a really wonderful opportunity to help smaller communities make sure that they're planning to get the most out of their communities. We also have about 45 individuals in our offices that support the Agency on Aging and Disability. We are that designated organization for Middle Tennessee, which means we provide social services across the region. So right now we have, I think we're up to 70 individuals that are under our guardianship. Those that have older adults with disabilities, or they're low-income individuals that don't have families. If they're assigned to the state, then they're assigned to us, and so we take care of them as best possible. We also we provide Medicare and Medicaid counseling. So who around here has Medicaid on their mind for future retirement plans? You think about, good, great. So, or if your parents may need to know about Medicare and Medicaid in the future, that's something that's been really eye-opening to me, is that as those that I love around me are getting closer to the ages of retirement, it's important to understand those programs. We have 2 counselors in our offices that will provide non-biased Medicare counseling training. One of the most rewarding things that we do from that program is the amount of money that some of our staff has been able to save low-income individuals across the region by sitting down with them, understanding their financial situation and understanding their prescription services. And we have an individual that a client in the Clarksville area helped him save almost $20,000 a year on prescription costs. So that's a wonderful story. It's a ridiculous problem. So with Medicare enrollment coming up on October 15th, that's something that we're really trying to get out in front of folks and let them know that we provide this service. Also, for the TennCare, we provide the choices and options programs. So again, if you're a low-income individual and you need to be evaluated for potential services, in-home services, if you need help cleaning your home, taking a bath, being fed, we work with Meals on Wheels, programs like that as well. And we also are the designated economic development district for Middle Tennessee. And so we in that role, we're responsible for creating what's called the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy for the region. And we do that every 5 years. This year we're in an update process. And so we bring together all of the economic development players across Middle Tennessee and set shared strategies for the region. These are things that already exist. We're not recreating the wheel. We're bringing together all the existing goals and setting shared priorities. And that program allows us to be eligible for state and federal grants for economic development. So, all right.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Michelle. So unfortunately, you don't get to participate in the poll, but later on in the presentation, I will give you a link to our website and our other social media so that you can provide us with feedback. I apologize, technology got the better of me this morning, so you'll just have to listen to me. So today we're going to give you a little bit of an overview and talk about where we're at in the study and what we have accomplished to date and where we're headed, as well as the partners that we have involved in our efforts. We're going to talk a little bit about the transportation and land use challenges within the South Corridor and why we're looking at this study and looking at future opportunities for transportation and land use within the corridor. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming meetings that we have and invite you all to participate in those meetings and also participate in the project through our social media as well. So in terms of this study, as Michelle outlined, kind of the overall what GNRC does, they look at transportation and land use issues throughout Middle Tennessee. Along with GNRC, we also have WeGo Public Transit as a major sponsor, and then the Tennessee Department of Transportation. In addition to that, the communities along the corridor have also contributed and are also involved in the study process. And so we have been working over the past several months to really engage not only the public and you all as stakeholders in the future of this corridor, but also those communities and kind of looking at their future land use and future transportation challenges. So in terms of a vision for the South Corridor, we have been working with people throughout events like this and throughout our public meetings and really identified this vision as a safe and reliable rapid transit connection between Nashville and the communities along the corridor in Williamson and Murray counties. And really that's where we're at with this process, is we're very early on. We're really looking for input and looking for ideas on how to better connect the communities along this corridor and provide better opportunities for mobility within the corridor. And so that's why, again, we're at events like this today, is really seeking your input and your ideas and how you use the corridor and how today and in the future. And so when we talk about the South Corridor, we're talking about really a 3-county area, Davidson, Williamson, and Murray counties. And then within that, we're primarily focused on 3 transportation corridors. The first being I-65. We're also looking at US 31 and then the CSX Railway. And so we're looking at how we can better provide opportunities for increased transit within one of those 3 corridors or within multiple of those 3 corridors in the near future and longer term. And out of this study, we're really looking again to gather a lot of input, but also to make recommendations for short and medium and long-term goals that the community has for providing better transportation opportunities and connecting to existing transit that's in the area. We're also working with the local communities, as I said, to identify opportunities where around station locations or stops, there might be opportunities for additional growth, or there might be opportunities to create kind of a node of activity that can happen at a transit station or location. And we want all of this to feed into the future plans that the communities have, as well as the plans that the transit agencies have along the corridor. So it ultimately becomes one overall kind of approach to how transportation within the corridor will look and how it will work for you all. And we recognize that not everyone is going to ride transit, that some folks prefer or like to have their own vehicle for whatever reason, or that it may not work for you on a particular day. But we also want to recognize that we need to provide that opportunity and that transit needs to work in concert with all the other transportation modes and existing transportation and the future needs in the corridor. So in terms of transit, we're looking at a whole list of different transit modes, everything from conventional bus to BRT to light rail to commuter rail into maglev and other items, but we're also trying to pair that and work cooperatively to identify how that transit connects with existing and planned roadway or intersection or interchange improvements within the corridor, or emerging technologies that might be able to be used in the immediate future and in the long term to address traffic and congestion in this corridor. So like I said, we've been at this process for several months. We had an initial round of meetings back at the end of April and early May. We are coming back with another round of meetings at the end of this month and in 2 or 3 weeks to kind of provide an update and additional information and gather additional input from folks like you within the communities along the corridor. And then the intent is to come back in early November with some final recommendations and then really wrap everything up by the end of this calendar year. So that's kind of the timeline that we're on. We really got kicked off back in April, and we've been making good progress ever since. And as we've gone out and met with folks and talked with folks, we've gathered some input and some feedback. As part of that feedback, majority of the people, no surprise, currently today travel by car. A lot of that has to do with that flexibility that folks see in that, but also that there's not necessarily a lot of transit options, although there are some within this corridor. And so that's what we're looking at, again, as part of this study is how to increase those options. The other thing that we've heard is about half of the commuters travel along the corridor, either along I-65 or US 31, multiple times each day. So it is a well-traveled corridor, and we have some additional statistics to talk about kind of where people are going and where they're coming from. Some folks, majority of folks, about 60% are going from their home to work, but then there's also a fairly sizable percentage of people that are going to other destinations, either for entertainment or shopping. And as you all know, or very well know, there are a lot of destinations along this corridor. So it's not that everybody is going to downtown or everybody's going to one destination, but a lot of folks are hopping on either the interstate or driving down US 31 to go to multiple destinations depending on the day and the time of day. A lot of folks, again, no surprise, are experiencing delays in that early morning commuter peak and then in the evenings as well. So that's something that we're looking at, is how to address that. And then in talking with folks and getting some feedback, people typically experience delays around the Old Hickory Boulevard interchange, and as you get closer into downtown Nashville, near 440. The interesting thing that we've heard, and we asked this question, and I apologize again that the technology didn't work this morning, is do you currently use public transportation either in your day-to-day daily travels or when you travel to other locations? And the good news is about 19% of the folks respond that they use public transportation either in their daily activities or when they travel. And so we think there's a great market of people that, again, if transit were more available and faster and more efficient, that they might be more willing to use it. And so, again, that's all input that is helping us in crafting those recommendations that we'll bring out to the public later this month at those meetings at the end of the month. And then as far as preferred transit solutions, folks are very interested in the possibility of light rail within the corridor, but also bus rapid transit and commuter rail. So again, those are some of the options that we're going to be looking at, but we're not just focused on transit options. As I said before, we're also focused on how that transit ultimately connects to other services, other transit services, how you could go to a park and ride and then hop on some sort of a transit solution, or Uber and Lyft or other emerging technologies are all a part of the solution for transportation in this corridor. So that's a little bit of background about what we're looking at, the timeline, and some of the feedback that we've gotten to date. Beyond that, we get the question often asked of, well, why are you looking at this corridor? Well, this is one of 9 major corridors that go in and out of downtown Nashville. This is the last corridor to be studied within the past 10 or 12 years. All the other corridors have been studied to date, and there is similar recommendations for each of those corridors as we are anticipating coming out with for this corridor. But as you all know, and this is no secret, and you all obviously have seen this if you've spent any time and lived in Franklin or Middle Tennessee for any amount of time, this area, Franklin especially, and Williamson County, are growing at a rapid rate. And so more people means more cars, more jobs means more people traveling from their home to their jobs, and an increased amount of traffic on the roads. So the time you spend in traffic today or stuck in traffic today, unfortunately, is only going to get worse as more people move here and more jobs locate here. And so we have this graphic to kind of show you in the blue current travel times. This is out of the model, the MPO's regional transportation model. So today it's about 30 minutes from Franklin to downtown Nashville. Spring Hill's a little bit farther than from Spring Hill to Franklin is about 20 minutes. But in the red, if we look out about 20 years, all of those times basically double. And so that's the anticipated, or that's projected because of the growth within Middle Tennessee. And the most often response I get to this slide is, I already experienced those red bars. So I'm already seeing that it's much more than what the model is showing. So again, I apologize for not bringing good news this morning, but I think it helps to kind of let people know, and it's information that you already know of what is the existing and then what are the potential future conditions. So this is something that we need to look at and need to focus on. And as I said, there are a number of destinations along the corridor. Cool Springs was mentioned as a major destination, the GM plant down in Spring Hill. So you have a lot of locations, not just downtown Nashville, of where people are going to work, or they're going for entertainment, or they're going to shop. And oftentimes what you'll see is that people will hop on the interstate or they'll hop on 31 because those are the most convenient routes to get to and from those destinations. And that causes all that traffic and causes all that backup. And so, interestingly, in this corridor, we're not dealing with just trying to get people into downtown and out in the morning and in the evenings. We're really dealing with people kind of moving up and down the corridor throughout the day, on the weekends for shopping and entertainment. And so it's really trying to come up with recommendations or solutions to address all of that. The other thing that's a little bit unique about this corridor is the number of people that go from Williamson County into Davidson every day to work is about the same number that come from Davidson into Williamson to work. So there's a lot of what's called reverse commuting. There's a lot of folks that are coming from Murray County into Williamson to work or to shop or something like that. So again, it's just reflective of kind of the uniqueness of this corridor, that there is so much of this back and forth and not these long trips along the corridor. So like I said, I mentioned, in addition to just looking at transit improvements or possibilities within the corridor, we're also looking at roadway and intersection upgrades. TDOT recently completed their I-65 multimodal corridor study. We're using a lot of the information and some of the recommendations in that to look at where improvements are planned. That study looked at a lot of the community's major transportation plans and their recommendations, and so we're going to pull all that sort of information into our recommendations as well. In addition to that, as I mentioned, there is existing transit service along the corridor. WeGo Public Transit operates obviously within Davidson County and then has commuter options that extend down into this corridor. Franklin Transit runs their trolley system as well as their VanStar system for people carpooling or van pooling. And then in Columbia, the Muletown Trolley has several routes, and they've actually seen a very big uptick in the folks that are using that service. And so whatever recommendations or possible solutions that we come up with, we want to make sure that it ties in with either the existing offerings of the transit agencies along the corridor or expanded offerings, so that ultimately you can get from your starting destination to a transit station or stop to your final destination. So it all has to work together. It all has to work as one system so that it is efficient and works well and serves the people that are going to use it. So like I mentioned, we have a number of meetings and open houses coming up at the end of the month. We're working to finalize those dates and locations, but when we do that, we can share that information with Mindy to share that out with this group, and we would encourage you to hopefully come out to those meetings. We'll have some interactive things that you'll be able to participate in, helping us identify where people are coming from and where you're going to. We'll have some ideas on kind of transit opportunities that we see within the corridor based on the information we've gathered to date and the feedback we've gotten from the public. And then we've also been working with the local planners to start to identify where kind of areas that we see as potential for either transit stations or stops. And we really want your input and ideas on, is that the right location? Does that make sense? And so I would encourage you to come out to those public meetings once they get advertised and help us out with any input or any feedback. As we're getting closer to those meetings, we'll have additional information on our website. The project does have a website. It's southcorridor.org. Again, there's a lot of good information out there. There's some fact sheets and some additional information beyond what I've covered in the presentation this morning. And then finally, we are trying to plug our social media outlets. So we have a Instagram, a Facebook, and a Twitter. I would encourage you, hopefully before leaving this morning, to go ahead and sign up for one of those so that you can follow the study and our progress and any recommendations and any opportunities that we have to plug the project through social media. So again, very much appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all this morning. I apologize for the glitch with the technology, but hopefully that will encourage you to come out to the public meetings or hop on the website and provide us additional feedback beyond what we've been able to get here today.
We are going to we do have some time for questions. I want to remind you that we want to have civil conversation. This is about building our community in a positive way. So I'm going to bring the mic to you and have you answer the question because the City of Franklin TV is here and I want to make sure we get the question, then I'll bring it back to Doug to answer it. So I'll hold the mic.
Does the website explain what the different transit options are, like commuter rail and light rail?
Yes, very good question. We do have an interactive page on there that shows those different types and the different characteristics, and we actually have examples from other cities where that type of transit has been implemented successfully, and so you can look at a map and see where it exists today and get some additional information. But great question.
Great, and we will send that out, that link, some of these links out to you today, as well as post this presentation on our website.
Thanks so much, Doug. I have a question about the CXS Railroad. I know that they are really overly subscribed right now in terms of all the freight and everything else they're moving, and I appreciate that because we've grown so much. But are there opportunities for us and that entity, given their growth, or are there rail spurs that are vacant right now that could be tapped into? What does that look like?
Another great question that we get asked a lot. So we have had a couple of good discussions with the folks at CSX. As you indicated, they are very much overprescribed and they are very much in the business of operating their freight routes with Radnor Yard, and they have emphasized to us the importance of not only Radnor Yard in their overall system, but also the convergence of lines in the Nashville area that lead from one location to another. Now, beyond that, they have provided us with some criteria. If we were to locate passenger rail within or adjacent to their existing freight lines, and so we are right now working with that criteria to see how passenger rail might fit, or if it doesn't fit, what its impacts are. And so again, that'll be something that as we move forward with the process, we'll be able to provide more details. But again, we have had some good discussions with them, and they have provided that criteria for us to work within.
Thanks, Doug, for being here. Very interesting. I've always wondered, and I know that we have, through the federal government, restrictions on our HOV lanes, but I think they could be utilized much better. So what criteria do we have to do? I mean, what criteria is there, and what availability is there to use our HOV lanes with the new emerging technologies that you can actually be traveling in those lanes, and the lights can come on and say, move out of the lane. You move out of the lane, the rapid transit goes straight forward, and then you get to move back in that lane and utilize that lane. I know other people are doing this. What do we have in the future?
So yes, so much like CSX, we have been interacting and have had some meetings and are continuing to have meetings with TDOT. As we look ahead to some of the potential transit options, we do recognize that there are other communities that use those HOV lanes for buses and that sort of thing. And so those are some of the options that as we move forward, we're going to be looking at and be working with TDOT on doing that. In addition, TDOT is doing a smart mobility effort on I-24. And so we're going to look and see what sort of emerging technologies or things that they're working on I-24 might be applied to I-65 to better help with the flow of traffic and look at opportunities of how you can use the existing lanes better, including the HOV lanes. It's not necessarily to move people out and back in, but there are locations where buses utilize that HOV lane and then pull off to a station or a stop and then get back into that lane.
On the smart corridor on I-24, they are moving towards implementing some managed lanes, which is what you're describing. And that is something that we will be looking at as we look at evaluations for this. So it'll be really interesting to see how well that operates, because it's a great tool.
So I'm going to ask a question of you. How many of you use Franklin Road, Highway 31, I-65 as part of your daily commute? Raise your hand. How many are on I-65 daily? How many are on Franklin Road, Highway 30? Okay, that's great to know and see in this group. So is there another question? Mayor Moore?
I've actually got several questions, several comments. And first of all, we've been pushing for this study for a long time, and I applaud everybody that's a partner on this and trying to move it forward. And we wish it would move faster and see the recommendations. But one of the things you said that bothered me a little bit, and you probably don't realize you said it, is that you're looking for similar recommendations in this corridor for what you did in the other corridors. This corridor is totally different than the other corridors. You already pointed out one difference, and I think that the citizens along this corridor are looking for different type of solutions, more imagination than just the same old routine. I would challenge you as you're moving forward that you spend a day on the Franklin Transit to make sure that you have the input of those citizens. 60% of the ridership is they're going to work, and so we'd like to know how to expand that. The other thing was your travel times that you listed from Spring Hill to Franklin. I would challenge some of those numbers. I think that needs revising. I don't think that's accurate. I'm not sure where that information came from. And we look forward to seeing the I-65 corridor study at some point in time also as part of this presentation to enhance what you're saying.
Thank you, Mayor Moore. Doug? Okay. I'll go over here to Doreen.
Thank you. Thank you. I admire everything you're trying to do. When I worked in downtown Nashville, I took the RTA buses. Of course, they gave us all the ones that Henry Ford came off his assembly line. We did not get the really great transit buses, but it was so convenient. When there was a traffic problem, you could sit there, read, socialize, sleep, whatever. And I think we need to educate our population as to the advantages of a commute before we can have them actually accepting and using, whether it's a commuter bus, light rail, regular rail, or whatever. So we've got to start changing our mindset.
Thank you.
Right here. The stats from 2015, 78,000 population, 10,052 live and work in Franklin, 22,133 work outside of Franklin, and 59,085 commute into Franklin, 2015.
Great. I'm going to go back to the back row. How many of you were born here? Okay. Here in Williamson County.
Thanks, Minnie. Hi, Bob Ravener. Two questions for you. Thanks for being here. One, in Atlanta, as an example, with all their traffic challenges, they've developed some raised platforms in order to work through that, and wonder if that's any part of the consideration, recognizing it's costly. But the second element of it is the secondary road pressures that emerge from this continuing growth, and is that being integrated into the planning that we're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so as far as the elevated routes that they use in Atlanta, as we move forward with potential recommendations, how that fits in with the existing right-of-way that's available and other impacts is something that we'll look at a high level. So we're not quite there yet, but by the end of the study, we'll have a recommendation on what that preferred alternative or alternative is, and then how it might fit or does it fit within the corridor. And then your other question was, secondary roads. And so I know, and I'm cognizant of the mayor's comment that we don't want to just pick something up from another route and bring it to this route. We want it to be a recommendation that fits this corridor, fits the travel within this corridor. But one of the things that they are looking at in I-24 is those parallel routes. And so I think that's one of our approaches to this project is really looking at I-65 and US 31 in partnership as to how either if something happens on one, how traffic gets rerouted, or how the timing of signals and those sort of things all sort of work together ultimately so that you can have that dual route. So that is something that we're meeting with and talking with TDOT about that, and that'll be something that'll come out ultimately in the recommendations.
I know many of you probably use Waze or some other type of technology when you're traveling to look at where congestion is or that sort of thing. You also, the city's cable channel is here. During peak times of the rush hour, they do provide access to the city's traffic cameras that are at busy intersections, and so you can watch those and see that before you leave home and plan your route accordingly.
Hi. So I've got some background information. There's a policy analysis that came out in November from the Cato Institute with the title Charting Public Transit's Decline. And it did a national study over several years, incorporated a lot of different studies from different groups, including the University of Minnesota Center for Transit. And what they found was that overall, not only does transit carry fewer riders, in terms of the majority of half the nation's 50 largest urban areas carried fewer than 3% of their workforce. to work every day. It also failed on speed, commute times, and percent of accessibility to jobs, because they did a study, and this is from the University of Minnesota Center for Transportation, 2015 study found that the nation's largest metro areas, the average resident could reach more than 3 times as many jobs in a 20-minute commute than a 60-minute commute on transit. So my question to you is twofold. One, is this a foregone conclusion that you all are going to push down the residents of this county and other communities, that this is going to happen, you're going to have transit whether you like it or not? Because the cost, it's 70 times more expensive for transit subsidies than it is for highway subsidies. But second part of that is, how much emphasis truly is being placed upon road improvements? Because there's not a single exit up and down I-65 in Williamson County right now that doesn't add traffic and then merge lanes, which is the biggest complaint that I have, is that our obsolescent roadway system is built to slow and create congestion as opposed to moving traffic through it.
Thank you. So that's an interesting point you bring up, because we get that question a lot. And I'll just go quickly to the 3% of the population that you referenced. 3%, depending on what community you're in, can be thousands of people. And so while there is, in various parts of the country, a decline in transit use, a lot of that does not have to do with the existence of transit, but the investments that are being deferred in transit systems across the region and across the country. That is a significant challenge. And it's hard. There's not enough money for all our infrastructure needs. So your other question about, is something going to be pushed down your throat? No. That's why we do these studies. This is a study. This is not a project that we're putting in front of your plate and asking you to pay for. This is an opportunity for everyone across the region to tell us what they want as the best way for them to move across the region. We have a challenge on a regular basis with people telling us they don't want things to change and they don't want people to grow. They don't want the region to grow. However, if you are a parent, you've probably asked your children to have grandchildren. Those are new humans that are part of the population growth. And so it's not always an option to control growth. However, it's an option to manage it. And we want to know from everyone here, what you think is the best opportunity to control growth and what are the least preferred opportunities to control growth. Because it's not a one size fits all. And the level of investment is going to vary. So there may be a recommendation that it's bus on shoulder, which isn't as investment intensive as other types of technology. And your question about are we really looking at other opportunities besides just transit? Yes. And I'm going to say that again, yes. Right now, we have a regional smart cities assessment underway that is working with TDOT and the FHWA and all the cities and counties across the region to determine the level of technology that is already in the ground and the level of technology that they need to implement over the future. Because I don't know about you all, but I don't care if I cross a county line, if I cross a county line driving to and from work. I want that light in Williamson County to be synced with the light in Davidson County. And so those are the types of things that we're looking at that are very simple, but knowing what jurisdictions are planning for what future investments will help us coordinate that better to improve the flow of people and goods and things like that. So.
Try to come back around.
Well, my question was better timed in terms of the comment about Atlanta, because one of the things I've noticed about Atlanta, and then I just spent an interesting adventure in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, is that all of those lanes are now toll roads. And as a consequence of that, and particularly for visitors, because then you get the fees on addition to the toll road, that there is an economic disparity that is associated with that kind of a choice. And by your nodding your head, you've already given some thought to that. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, so we're not necessarily looking at tolling as an option here. It may come out as We look toward future recommendations, but anytime you're looking at tolling, and we do these sort of studies across the country, you have to be cognizant of the impact that that tolling has on the community and the people within that community. So it always is a factor that you look at, and it's something, again, that we want input from folks that are traveling the corridor today as far as how that could potentially impact them. So it is definitely a part of the analysis.
Just a moment of humor. A couple years ago, we took a group to Alpharetta, Georgia, and when I went down for a preliminary visit with their then Mayor, David Bell Isle, I said, Mayor, in Alpharetta, I said, I don't want to be rude, but often in our community we say we don't want to be the next Atlanta, and he went, neither do we. He was it's pretty humorous to me. You had a question.
Some of the earlier part of your presentation gave statistics on timing and where the bottlenecks were. And it would seem to me that ultimately the solution and the problem are one and the same. It's time sensitive. If you take a look, like you said, at maybe 8 o'clock in the morning, there's a bottleneck, and at 6 o'clock in the evening, if people habits changed and there was that usage within the day or later in the evening, as there are in other parts of the country, you wouldn't have the bottleneck. Otherwise, what happens, we lived in the Los Angeles area, and new freeways were put in or new lanes, and all that happened was instead of people leaving between 7 and 9, they all left at 8 o'clock. So the bottleneck still existed, and there really was no solution in the end. I don't know if that's what's going to be happening here.
No, absolutely, and I think it's something that we recognize, and it's an important point, is that if everybody starts their workday or is trying to get to their destination at the same time, that creates a lot of bottlenecks. And so as we're meeting with folks and doing outreach to different corporations, we've met with Nissan, we've met with Vanderbilt, because they have a lot of folks that commute in from Williamson County. We are talking about ways that we can work with them to potentially shift when people start, or earlier or later, or what have you, or work from home, work remotely. So, oftentimes what I'll say in these presentations is we recognize that there's not a silver bullet solution, that it's going to have to be a combination of things that includes potentially transit, that include roadway improvements, that include technologies, but it also includes addressing people's current behavior, either switching that or changing that or finding ways to make that different. So it's all a part of what we're going to be looking at.
Time for one more question.
I wanted to ask how much is it being considered if there's studies that is, of course, Europe seems to have had a lot of these issues. We're new, and these are new problems to us, but they've come up with a lot of solutions of what to do. They just have a certain amount of land and how they use it and how they move people in and out. And is Europe also being looked at as information?
Yes, the comparisons are a little different. As an example, to answer your question specifically, our executive director about a year and a half ago was awarded a German Marshall Foundation scholarship, and he went and spent 6 weeks traveling around to various cities in Europe, exploring how they manage their land use, how they did their transportation investments, and things like that. To your point, they're older cities, higher populations in some areas, and they have a different cultural connection to how they move around. And so, not that we can't learn anything from that, but it's something that we like to point out, that if we aspire to have those great community circles and those great opportunities to be out in the community and using the streets, not just for cars, but for people, there are a lot of wonderful examples from that part of the world.
Thank you, Doug and Michelle. They will be here to answer a few questions afterwards. I want to thank Williamson Medical Center and Renaissance Bank again and go by and see Renaissance new branch, which is now open on Columbia Avenue across from the police station. We also want to tell you about some upcoming events. Our next Walk More with the Mayor is August 26th, and we will be at the new Mars Pet Care headquarters out in the Ovation development, and that will be a pet-friendly walk as well. And so we'll be sending out information about that. And then our next, our next Frank Talks is September 9th, and I believe we'll be at the Enrichment Center, but we're firming up that topic and should get that out by the end of this week as well. And then I forgot earlier to ask you to save the date. And I want to ask you to save November 5th. That's our next On the Table initiative. And we want to invite you to come together again with people you know and people you don't know to have a conversation about what's important in our community and become engaged in being part of the solution. So November 5th, we'll be sending out a lot of information about that. We'll kick off the day at Breakfast with the Mayors at Rolling Hills Community Church, and you're welcome to come there. But we'll also have a series of events throughout the week, and we hope to culminate that on Saturday, November 9th, with a civic fair where you can come and learn more about nonprofits and other organizations that are having an impact in our community and how you can actually volunteer and become engaged. So November 5th, and we'll see you all next at September 9th, Frank Talks. Thanks so much. Have a great day.